Hello, my dear listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Journey to Creativity. I am your host, Vanessa Castro, and I am on my journey to discover what is my highest potential. And I am creating this podcast in order to inspire you to maybe jump in and try the same. What is your maximum potential as a human being? I am very much convinced at this phase in my life that anyone who pursues their passion is actually pursuing to find their highest potential as a human being. And that's why I love so much the company of artists. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about taking your art seriously. This is something that I haven't tapped into yet, but given the phase of my life that I am right now, and given the phase of this creative journey that I am right now, which started in January. Basically, it's been 7 months since I decided to take this seriously, and I found this book by Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, and I just decided to take it seriously for the first time. Basically, my entire life I had been, as I said in the previous episode, just kind of thinking that art was something superficial, not something that people would do to appear cool. I hadn't been able to, although I loved it, there was a part of me that was fascinated by art in every way, whether it was music or visual art or theater or books, poetry, stories, films. There was a part of me that I discovered it was just a subconscious thinking. It was a subconscious construct that was so hidden and so deeply rooted in the way that I was brought up in my family that I just thought that art was secondary deep inside my soul, even though there was a big need for it, and that I have just recently realized that might have been my block all this whole time, just thinking that I should be doing something more seriously, and my life is a proof of that. I mean, I was in business school, and before business school I tried other career paths, but I was worried all the time that I wasn't taking my life seriously if I was pursuing art too much. So even though I was playing the guitar, learning songs and trying to learn more, and I could spend hours practicing and all, deep inside my mind I thought, this is secondary, I can't dedicate so much time to this. And so here I am today. I am releasing these old paradigms from my brain and setting myself free. But there comes a point where once you realize you love this, once you realize you love art, and you realize there is a voice inside of you that is starting to be heard, and you're starting to see what it's trying to say, and you want to give it more attention to this. It's like falling in love. When you fall in love with someone, you want to know everything about that person, and you want to explore as much as you can with this person. You want to see what amazing things can we do together, and what can we create together, and what kind of life can we have together, what kind of experiences can we have together. And this is exactly what happens with art. Once you're like, oh my god, I love music, then there's a part of you that says okay, so why don't we take this a bit more seriously? And taking it seriously is just like I said, when you want to know everything about it. So what does it mean when it comes to art? We want to know theory. We want to know its history. We want to know how to better our technique. We want to know who are the main artists, who was the first one, who's the most avant-garde, who are the groundbreakers. You start, if it's music, you start listening to a whole bunch of, you start searching a whole bunch of artists that connect to you, that you want to be like, because we don't ever start from scratch. I mean, culture and art is something that is built collectively. It's something that we build on another. It's impossible to create in absolute isolation. I mean, I don't think it's impossible to create in absolute isolation, but what naturally happens, it's just what naturally happens is that we obtain inspiration from our fellow artists and from different genres of art and different types of artistic expression, right? There's so many ways. It can be right. It can be your clothes. It can be the way you dress, your hair, the way your looks. It's also an art form. But anyways, so that's when that happens when we love something, right? We get a little obsessed with it. And this is when I want to just make you think today. I just want to post a whole bunch of questions, because why does this happen? And is this something that can cripple you in some way? Because immediately as you realize, oh, I could actually be so much better. You see your negative capability, as Robert Greene says, right? We see the potential, which is just a positive way of saying we're not actually very close to how we would like to represent this art and the relationship that we would like to have with this art form, and the infinite possibilities that we want to explore. And what is this potential? It looks far ahead when we haven't practiced or haven't learned much, when we are just at the phase of, I want to do that, I love it, right? So we can fall into this desire of acquiring virtuosity, of falling into a certain perfectionist trap. And I want to ask you, do you think this is a trap? Is this an ego trip? Is this is there a danger that you, through learning and falling, entering left brain mode, right? Left brain, I always confuse the two sides, but left brain is the side that operates the right side of our body, and therefore it's also connected to all the rational information that we process. But how do we stay in touch with the right brain through this process? Are we perfectionists? Am I perfectionist? Are you? Because perfectionism is something that can cripple you if you allow it to. So I have a question here for you. What would you do if you didn't have to do it perfectly? And probably a lot more than you're doing now, right? And I also want to leave you, because I don't want to give answers to this. I just want you to think. I also want to give you a quote by Agnes de Mille. She was an American dancer and choreographer. She says, living is a form of not being sure, not knowing what next or how. The moment you know how, you begin to die a little. The artist never entirely knows. We guess. We may be wrong, but we take leap after leap in the dark. I just love that quote. I wanted to share it with you because, what would we do, right? We need to just take the leap. And that leads me to the other question: do we become perfectionists, or do we start in this quest for knowing more, getting better, out of fear? Do we fear? What are we afraid of? And here I want to give you another quote by Susan Jeffers. She says, "We cannot escape fear. We only transform it into a companion that accompanies us on all our exciting adventures." And she says, "Take a risk a day, one small or bold stroke that will make you feel great once you have done it." Take a risk a day. I like that. However, I'm looking into the bad side of this, right? The side that can cripple you. But I want you to think about it. Like, what is motivating you? Is it your ego? Is it fear? Is it just another escape route to creativity? Because that's the thing, is that even when you are a well-established artist who knows their craft, it is so easy. It's even more easy in a more comfortable phase of the craft, right? It's so much easier to like fall asleep in it and know that you have the formula. You have the perfect formula to make it work, so you don't need to think anymore. And that's just nature. It's not that we are lazy. Our brains are lazy by nature. Our brains try to economize the calories they're using. So if we don't push ourselves to constantly taking risks, right? Owning the fear and being creative, because in the end that is being creative, is taking the leaps, taking risks. And so that's a spirit that we must never allow to die. And it's much more alive in the beginning phases, because we are like you don't have a choice, right? It's like you don't know. So you're actually afraid, and you are actually feeling the excitement of the newness. And it's hard to be egotic at that phase, unless, no, it's not hard to be egotic, to be having an ego trip as a beginner. You might think that you're amazing, and suddenly you are crashed by reality and you're humbled. And that's good, because it's good to be humbled. It's good to know that art is built collectively. It's good to know also that there is abundance for everyone, and that we don't need to compare ourselves to others, right? But so getting the technique, getting the theory of your art form does not necessarily have to mean losing touch with the fun of it, and it shouldn't be. Because if you think about it, now you have more tools. When you start learning, you have more tools, so you can have even more fun with it. And that's why these pieces of knowledge, we should just take them little by little. And this is when I want to make a rebellious statement against the institution, the educational system that we have globally, right? It's basically the same system. Kids go to school, they are taught things, and we acquire so much theory. We don't experience things, and we get used to that, and that is a safe spot, And again, don't allow that to cripple you. Don't allow the knowledge to make you just sit down and observe the thing, right? Creativity and art it's something that is constantly alive. It's something that you will never be able to grasp. It's permanently slipping away from your hands. So it's a constant. It's alive. So these are like just little traps that we might step into and get into a sort of accommodation, and that can generate a block, can generate a block in someone who is already experienced, someone who has already done a lot of work and knows their craft pretty well, you may start becoming stale because of losing touch with the feeling of excitement and fear, the risk, right? So, and the other thing is that the ego trip question, like why are we trying to attain this perfection? Is it just because we want to feel cool and like be better than someone else? Again, I want to just make you a question, which is in The Artist's Way. Actually, this is a quote from the book. Julie asks, can you acquire the humility to start something despite your ego's reservations? So can you put yourself in a student mode again and again and again throughout your path, throughout your journey? How can you do that? How do we do that? How do we stay in touch with the student, the beginner, the apprentice phase? When you acquire a little certain level of mastery, immediately you need to start pulling yourself down, humbling yourself down to the apprentice phase again. There's always something new to learn. There's always something more to explore. And I don't know, now speaking from my own experience, I once I forgot about, once I decided to start taking this more seriously and start practicing a bit more often, which is I only started this year taking it actually seriously, practicing a few more days a week, not just once every now and then, because I released my own brain from the thought of it being something superficial. But I realized that art was actually something that I needed and that I love and that is healing to me, so I need to do it. And I love the connection with the community and the freedom that I'm starting to feel. And so I decide to take it more seriously. I decide to practice more often. And then as soon as I'm starting to practice more often, I start getting bored with the practice. And I ask myself, was it worth it to practice if I'm like not even feeling this song? I'm bored of playing the same song over and over. I'm learning, but I'm getting bored of it. And I can understand how that can happen, and how can you escape that boredom? Is by keeping the flame alive, right? Taking a little risk, changing the routine, innovating in your practice, innovating and doing things differently. But I do feel that my perception of acquiring theory and acquiring technique, I think that it just makes it even more fun. I honestly think it just makes the experience more exciting. And it also, specifically talking about music, because music is something that happens collectively, is one of the art forms that happens in a collective manner. And therefore you need a language to communicate to the other players, to the other musicians or fellow playmates, right? You need a way to communicate sometimes. And music theory is a way to communicate in music. So when you don't know that, and when people don't know that, and I am someone who doesn't know music theory yet, like I'm learning little by little. I live with a musician, Tim. He's always like, I say he's giving me little protein bars every now and then. He gives me like a lesson, and I use that because it's not like it's not a lecture, right? It's just a little bit of knowledge that he sees that I could use during my practice, or he sees that I could benefit from it, from what I'm doing. So I take that little protein bar and I eat it and I use it for several months. I don't need so much theory. You don't need so much. But, it all depends on what you want to do. But again, these are questions that I want you to think about. I want you to think about, why are you practicing? Why do you want to acquire technique? Why not, if you don't want to learn more about this art form that you love, right? It's something, if it's something that you love, why aren't you why you're resisting to know everything about it? That's one side. And on the other side, if you're going too hard with the knowledge and the left brain activity of technique and theory, why are you doing that too? Is that, what kind of motivation is that? I think we just need a balance of two. Tim always tells me also that he considers both to be extremely important, both the practice of technique, but if you have a certain objective, like a very specific objective of improving a determined thing that's been bothering you and it's been not allowing you to express fully, so you work on that thing that you're seeing that you need to improve. But you cannot lose the other side too. You cannot lose the playful side. You can't. They're completely two different kinds of practice. And I think that if we can do that, if we can keep both things alive, and I would add a third thing actually, because these might be like solo practices. I just want to there's a previous episode where I talked about community. It's called The Power of Community. And I would add that third element. So one would be practicing with the left brain. The other one is practicing with the right brain, which is just allowing yourself to have fun and create and see what comes out without thinking too much. And the third element would be being a part of the community in a safe space, because one reason that can motivate us to take it more seriously, and like, oh, I have to take this more seriously and study more or practice more, or is because you might have exposed yourself to a community or to people that harshly criticized you. And that's one thing that as sprouting artists, we really need to be careful. Where do we expose ourselves? We need to find safe spaces. Like I was talking about in that episode, Cypher Club, to me, is a safe space because it is a space where people are just being real and having fun and supporting each other. And we are there to express, to heal, to connect, and to support each other. It's not about the result. It's about having fun and, again, uplifting each other, supporting each other. And that, I think, is a huge element to developing any art form. It can be done in isolation. So yeah. That is it. That is today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are enjoying this podcast, please give me a like. Write me a comment wherever you want. You can comment on SoundCloud. And you can also follow my Instagram account, which is Creative Astrology without the E at the end of creative. So it's creative astrology all together. And well, yeah, I do post more astrology things there, but this is the phase where I'm in the journey right now. I am just like trying to mix these two worlds, because astrology and creativity to me are fundamental pillars of my main quest in life, which is knowing myself, knowing and developing myself, developing my highest potential. As I was saying at the beginning of this episode, I want to be connected to the divine source, and I want to be my life to be an expression of God, whatever God wants to do with my life. And I believe that between astrology and the creative expression, both have been huge to me. And I would love to, from an astrological point of view, there's a lot I can say about creativity as well. And that's why I want to do the other podcast as well. I just haven't come to a point where I can start it, but it'll come soon when the time comes. So thank you so much for supporting my podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And I hope this is inspirational and it's motivational and it's helpful for you. And I would really love to know about your journey. And I would love to know if you're starting to take a few steps, giving yourself permission to play more, giving yourself permission to ask for ridiculous little things that might seem meaningless to an adult but mean everything to a child. And your inner child is an artist, and I would say God is an artist as well, and artists get along with each other. So I think that's why I believe this journey is so important. So thank you so much once again for being here, for listening, and I will see you on the next one.